A good day. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World and the Black Business School. I'm going to give you guys a chance to settle in and to check out the podcast. I hope you guys are doing well. So today I wanted to dive into some stuff that's going on with a guy by the name of Tavis Smiley. Do me a favor, give me a yes or no if you are familiar with Tavis Smiley or know anything about what he does, or anything about his role on PBS and stuff like that, and the show that he had, the Tavis Smiley Show. I think it was called Tavis Talks. It was a good show. Tavis Smiley is a great journalist. He's been around. He's been in the game for a while. And what's going on, Matthew? And I see you in there. And Tavis is really, really dealing with an interesting situation with PBS right now. I don't know if you guys have followed this. In fact, give me a yes or no if you followed what happened with Tavis and PBS and the fact that they let him go for basically sleeping with women that he worked with, right? For basically sleeping with women that consensually wanted to be with him, that chose to be with him. And I guess now that's become kind of a criminal act in the eyes of some. But it's interesting. It's an interesting sort of thing to kind of analyze. And so I want to analyze this. But as I do that, do me a favor. Please hit the thumbs up button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. If you're on Facebook, if you could share this to your page, I'd appreciate it. So let me see here. Give me 1 second here. Okay. So basically, PBS, they claim that they conducted this internal investigation. It's not really transparent in terms of what kind of investigation they conducted, but they were looking for, I guess, evidence that Tavis had been having sex, because I guess sex for Black men is now illegal if you sleep with somebody that you work with or whatever. And so they went and they were searching for this evidence that this Black man had been caught sleeping with women. And so when they found out that he was sleeping with women, they decided that, we've got to get rid of this. This is absolutely unacceptable. A Black man sleeping with women, that's just unheard of. And so they removed him from his show. Right now, what's fascinating about all of this is that, it's really kind of a real interesting, dangerous, slippery slope that we're going down, in the sense that you're kind of basically saying that if a man has any power or influence or whatever, and if women hit on that man, like if women come up and, I mean, seriously, like there are lots of women that are attracted to men that have money and power. And Tavis had a lot of money. He had a lot of power. And so basically you're saying that if women hit on that man and he accepts any of their advances, then that man is no different from somebody he's no different from a Harvey Weinstein, right? He's no different from an R. Kelly, right? He's no different from any predator on the street who puts a gun to somebody's head and forces them to do something against their will. I found that to be a really, really interesting kind of argument that I think it defies logic. I think that it's an issue. I think it's something that we should be concerned about, largely because you're talking about something that is probably going to be selectively applied mostly to Black men. You're not going to see it applied as readily to either white men or to gay men, right? Now, here's the thing about PBS that's really fascinating to me. Simultaneously, while they are persecuting Tavis Smiley because they caught him sleeping with women, they're celebrating Billy Porter, who, as you know, Billy Porter is the brother that goes around wearing a prom dress. Give me a yes or no if anybody has seen the shenanigans of Mr. Billy Porter. Billy Porter is he's known as the most extravagant diva in Hollywood right now. And of course, that means he's going to be the most celebrated Black man in America, because they really enjoy the idea of Black men being hyper feminized. And so they downplay masculinity. They basically crucify masculinity and they celebrate femininity. And that's not different from what they did during slavery. That's no different from what has been done in America for hundreds of years. The Black man the feminine black man was always safer than the masculine black man. The black man in a dress was always going to get more opportunities than the black man who actually wanted to wear the pants in the house. And so so simultaneously, while you're seeing this relentless persecution of Tavis Smiley because PBS found out that he was sleeping with women that were hitting on him, you also see simultaneously that PBS is celebrating Billy Porter. They brought Billy Porter on Sesame Street in a prom dress, paraded him in front of children who still have not determined which side of the spectrum they're on, but they bring him out there in front of children in a prom dress on a PBS show, Sesame Street, while you're simultaneously persecuting a heterosexual black man for what you consider to be inappropriate displays of his masculinity. And so I can't help but notice that contrast, right? Give me a yes or no if you've seen Billy Porter, if you've ever seen Billy doing his thing in action. If you've ever seen him whipping around like a diva, it's really fascinating to watch. It's really interesting that this kind of behavior is sort of what is celebrated. But at the same time, it's not a surprise. If you know the history of America, none of this should surprise you. And I'll tell you this. And here's the thing I want to ask you. I want to ask you guys this question. Give me a yes or no answer to this. Yes or no, yes or no. Give me a yes or no. Have you ever in your life watched an episode of Sesame Street and saw a white man in a dress? Tell me if you've ever in your life, give me a yes or no. Have you ever seen an episode of Sesame Street where they had a white man come on Sesame Street wearing a dress? Give me a yes or no. If you've ever seen at any point an episode of Sesame Street where they had a white guy in a dress. Give me a yes or no. I'm looking in the chat. Okay, I see Eric says B1. HTH says no. Clarence, Eric, Ricky, Mama Zike, a different shade of purple. Yeah. I mean, I think you cannot ignore this, right? You can't act like this is some sort of balanced equation. This ain't balanced. There's a reason why they throwing your men out here looking like somebody's girlfriend, and they're celebrating that, right? And then simultaneously telling masculine black men that your behavior is inappropriate. That's why you got to stop listening to these damn folks and letting them educate your kids, because they are sick human beings and they don't have your best interests at heart. Can we at least agree that some of the stuff that we're seeing don't make no damn sense? It doesn't mean this is not anti anybody. This is not, some people like to label you. That's another tactic that's used. If they want to control your thinking, they'll label you. They give you a label. So you say, oh, no, I don't want to be labeled. So I'm going to back away from my perspective because I don't want to be labeled. I want to be politically correct. No, political correctness is for idiots. Political correctness is a type of oppression that is utilized to allow people to pursue their agenda by basically shutting down those who have dissenting points of view. So political correctness, it started from a place of good intention, but it has gotten to a place of not just utter ridiculousness, but extreme fascist oppression of freedom of thought and expression. It has become incredibly, some might say un-American, but then again, it's America that's really perpetuating this. So maybe it's very American. I don't know. It depends on how you look at it. But it's become a problem. And what I'm encouraging Black folks to do is to detach from some of that and at least learn to think for yourself. Now, do me a favor. If you could, wherever you're watching anywhere, could you please hit the thumbs up button, share, subscribe button. Also, if you could, if you're on Twitter, please retweet this conversation because we got some dumbass people out here that need to hear from intelligent Black people so they don't fall for the nonsense. So if you know an idiot, do them a favor, send the idiot a gift by retweeting or sharing this video so that they can actually hear from a perspective that's a little bit different from mainstream media, very different from mainstream media, because I'm not going to give you what mainstream media is giving you. I'm not interested in that. Also, if you're new here, I want to welcome you to drboycetv.com. This is the home for intelligent Black people. So if you're Black and intelligent, say I. If you put Black people first, type B1 in the chat. B1 means Black people come first. That means our community matters. It means our community is number one in our mind. It means that we need to defend our issues and conquer our issues and not wait for other people to do it for us. Waiting for other people is not a success strategy for Black people. We must move forward deliberately and do things with a type of self-determination. So let me read Tavis Smiley. He's coming out swinging. You know, God bless him for this. I respect him for this. I have not talked to Tavis ever, actually. Now that I think about it, he and I have never had a conversation, but he and I have known about each other for about probably 13 years. And we haven't always agreed with each other. Like, for example, I did not agree. I felt that he was a little bit too hard on Barack Obama back when he sort of went at Barack over that whole State of the Black Union thing. But, you know, it's years later. It's a decade later. And I support truth and justice when I see it. So in this particular situation, I certainly support Tavis. And also in general, I support Tavis's existence as a Black public figure, because he's always carried himself with tremendous intelligence and dignity. And you must, in my opinion, we must stand up for intelligent, dignified Black men who have a chance to go into the public eye. So I respect Tavis, and this is why I'm doing this video. So let me read Tavis's statement. Tavis is going out swinging with PBS. He's not going to let them just bury him in the dirt. He's taking them to court, and he wants an open trial. And he's looking forward to kind of laying all the facts out on the table. And I look forward to seeing what's there. And so here's what he wrote. He said he wrote an article on his Facebook page that says, "Why I am going to trial against PBS." He says, "Because it is my name, because I cannot have another in my life." John Proctor utters these words to Hale, Paris, and Danforth in Arthur Miller's The Crucible as they try to convince him to confess to conspiring with the devil and thereby save his life. Proctor refuses, stands strong, and dies with the goodness that once defined him as a human being. One could argue that this analogy is a bit exaggerated, but my case against PBS is not a matter of life and death. Perhaps, but the false accusations that PBS leveled against me over 2 years have threatened to ruin me professionally, economically, emotionally, and even spiritually. Our reputations are the most valuable things we own, and they have attempted to trash mine beyond redemption. But for my abiding faith and strong belief that misery must never have the last word. In the absence of fundamental fairness, there is but one option: fight back. We must live our lives by a certain set of immutable principles, and one's integrity is non-negotiable. The greatest challenge I have faced over these 2 years is to remain quiet, even as the public has absorbed vicious and vulgar lies that one cannot publicly correct, because PBS's first act was to move the court for a protective order, which I vehemently opposed, but lost. I argued then and believe now that sunlight is the best disinfectant. So apparently, let's read that last sentence again. He says, "The greatest challenge I faced is to remain quiet." So he says he's wanted to talk about it, but he couldn't. Even as the public has absorbed vicious and vulgar lies that one cannot publicly correct. So he cannot publicly correct the lies from PBS, according to Tavis, because PBS's first act was to move the court for a protective order, which I vehemently opposed but lost. Now, here's what Tavis appears to be saying. It appears that Tavis is saying, I wanted to talk about all of this. I wanted to lay it out there. I wanted to give my side of the story. He says that he was not allowed to do that. A lot of times in these lawsuits, your lawyers will also advise you not to talk and things like that. And I can tell you that's really tough to do when somebody's out here making stuff up. What I will say, with this is that, I think PBS has a legitimate reason to be concerned that the Black community may turn against them and view them as the racist liberals that they are. You see, one of the biggest myths that you've been fed for a very long time is that the liberals are your friends and the conservatives are always your enemies. I'm not here to say the conservatives are your friends. I don't believe Black people have any friends. I just really don't believe that. But one thing I will tell you is that I found it fascinating when Dr. Claude Anderson came on this podcast, and he tells a story about how Strom Thurmond, a man who was considered to be one of the most racist Republicans that there is, Strom Thurmond actually worked with him to get 3 Black judges, Black federal judges, in exchange for some farm equipment or something like that. So basically what he said was that I didn't like him. He didn't like me. He didn't like Black people. I don't like white people. But we made a quid pro quo where he respected me because I came to him with something and I demanded something. And he said, as a result, he got 3. I think there was maybe 30. I think he mentioned 30 black federal judges or something. And he got 3 of them by himself. And so the point of the matter is to say that, this idea that the liberals are your friends, the PBS liberals are your buddies. I think that's a myth, because did anybody give me a yes or no if you saw this? Yes or no if you saw this? Did you see where the Disney heiress, I forgot her name, Abigail Disney, where she was basically the first one to jump out here and say these crazy things about Kobe Bryant? Did anybody else see that? Abigail Disney, and if you look up her bio, look up her background, she is a very, very deliberate, very dedicated liberal. She's a liberal soldier, right? And she was one of the first ones to step out and say, Kobe Bryant's a rapist. Deal with it. He's a rapist, right? And not once did she mention that the lady who accused Kobe, the only evidence they have that Kobe did anything wrong was that she knocked on his door. She was searching him out, looking for him. And then also, the only thing we also know is that she had the semen of a bunch of dudes in her panties when they went and checked her stuff. Y'all know all the facts, right? I mean, if we're gonna talk about what Kobe was accused of, then we need to talk about the accusers too, right? This was a money grab. This wasn't no like serious, legitimate allegation, like credible allegation. This was not credible. And then I don't know if you know this or not, but go look it up. From what I understand, this lady had a history of mental illness. If I'm not mistaken, I remember seeing the word schizophrenia in her background when I saw this. And when I read up on the story, I went through, I'm not going to go out and defend somebody who did something wrong. I'm not interested in that. But I was like, what are the details of this? And I read and I was like, oh, schizophrenia? What? So she's on psychiatric medication? So you're talking about a crazy person making an accusation, a crazy person who, let's research this. And this is important. This ties back to Tavis and the continuous perpetual persecution of the black man, which in many cases actually comes from your so-called white feminist liberal allies, right? So your so-called allies are the ones who are attacking you the most half the damn time. So with friends like that, you don't need no enemies. Your enemies are the people that you in the bed with, man. Seriously. So anyway, let me just say this. Alicia, the woman I'm going to marry, the black woman I'm going to marry on July 11th, everybody's invited. Southside Chicago is going down. When I said, yeah, I read that this lady had a history of schizophrenia. Alicia, who's a mental health expert, she has clients, she does therapy and stuff. She said, oh, schizophrenia? Whoa. Right. That's what, so I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me look this up. So schizophrenia, according to, I just Googled it here. There's a definition from dictionary.com, I think. It says it's a long-term mental disorder of a type involving a breakdown in the relation between thought, emotion, and behavior, leading to faulty perception, inappropriate actions and feelings, withdrawal from reality, and personal relationships into fantasy and delusion, and a sense of mental fragmentation. So when they're running around here calling Kobe every name in the book, I mean, from the grave, like, it ain't like you're protecting anybody when you're attacking a dead person. Just so you know, you're not, when you shine the light on what you think Michael Jackson might have did or whatever, you're not doing it for public safety, because you got some real predators out here. Billy Porter's buddies. I'm sure Billy Porter got some buddies that are doing some stuff in the background, but you ain't never gonna shine a light on that. So you're running around here going after dead people as if you're somehow protecting somebody. You're not protecting a damn thing. Because last time I checked, dead people don't have sex. Yes or no? Are dead people able to have sex and I just don't know it? Like what's really going on here? Like, yes or no? Can dead people have sex? No, they can't. So my point is to say that PBS is part of that white liberal army. They're part of that liberal, cadre of so-called allies that you think are your buddies. You think these people are your friends. They ain't your damn friends. So simultaneously, while PBS, the guy in the prom dress, they're uplifting Billy Porter and they're oppressing Tavis Smiley. I find that to be a really fascinating coincidence. And y'all need to pay attention. Y'all need to check the chat. Make sure you guys can hear me and see me. Give me a yes or no if you can hear me and see me. All right. So let me read more of what Tavis wrote here. And just so you know, please hit the thumbs up button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. Also, my website is boycewatkins.com if you want to know more about what we got going on. So he says, in the absence of fundamental fairness, there is but one option: fight back. We must live our lives by a certain set of immutable principles, and one's integrity is non-negotiable. The greatest challenge I faced over these 2 years is to remain quiet, even as the public has absorbed vicious and vulgar lies that one cannot publicly correct, because PBS's first act was to move the court for a protective order, which I vehemently opposed but lost. I argued then and believe now that sunlight is the best disinfectant. I agree. Though long delayed, my day in court would not be denied, and this is why I'm going to trial. He says the truth matters. Sometimes to get at the truth, you have to look beyond the facts. When PBS leaked to Variety on December 13th, 2017, that they had, quote, multiple credible allegations of sexual misconduct against me, I immediately and profusely denied the scurrilous allegations. I did acknowledge, however, that over the course of my 30-year broadcast career, I had consensually dated persons with whom I had worked. Now, remember, you're not talking about assault. You're talking about consensual interaction. You're talking about human beings doing what human beings do. So he says, so let's read here. He says, so over 30 years of doing this, 30 years of being a workaholic, 30 years of spending more time at work than he spent anywhere else, he dated a couple of women. He dated a few women. I don't know. Maybe he dated more than a few. I don't know. But I know I can tell you this. Let me tell you a couple of stories I know about Tavis Smiley. One was I knew a guy who was the husband, Kyle Bowser, who was the husband of Yvette Lee Bowser, who created the show Living Single. Kyle Bowser used to call us about once a year, and he was a very nice guy. I liked Kyle Bowser a lot. I really did. Kyle worked very closely with Tavis Smiley. And I remember one conversation Kyle and I had about Tavis was because a lot of people compared what I do, my brand, to Tavis Smiley, right? And I had a respect and admiration for Tavis, still do. And I remember Kyle talking to me about how hard Tavis works and how they'd had conversations about all the hours, thousands and thousands of hours every year that Tavis was spending at work. So if you're spending the majority of your time at work, then most of the time, people that spend thousands of hours at work end up dating someone at work. Let me ask you this. Give me a yes or no. How many of you have or know someone who has dated someone that they work with? How many of you have or know someone who has slept with somebody they work with? Give me a yes or no. How many of you know somebody who dated, married, or just kicked it with, had, a fling or whatever with somebody that they work with? Yes or no? Have you ever seen it happen? If you haven't done it yourself, have you ever seen it happen? Now, mind you, it's very risky, especially in today's environment. I'm not a fan of, if I were working for the man, there's no way I would be doing any of that. Or I would try my best to avoid it, or at the very least, that you're putting your career and everything at risk, because they somehow act like that's now a form of predatory behavior. But they only go after the men, by the way. They'll only go after your son. They're not going to go after the little Becky that's chasing him down, sending him text messages in the middle of the night. They're not going to go after her because she's a child, right? And in their mind, she's a child. She can't control her behavior. Her impulses can't be managed. But your son, they'll fry his ass and throw him out in the street in a second and ruin his whole career and everything he's worked for. And they might try to send him to jail. So, I'm not sitting here condoning workplace fraternizing, but let's just keep it 100. If you're working 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week, and spending more time at work than you're spending at home or with your own family, you're spending more time at work than you're spending doing anything else. And also, you're a powerful, wealthy man like a Tavis Smiley, where women are hitting on you every day. And over a 30-year period, I imagine at some point, some love making gonna happen. Something gonna go down. Y'all might say it shouldn't happen, or maybe we want everybody want to pretend to be pure and perfect, like you never slept with somebody that you wish you hadn't slept with. But I'm here to be honest with you. We're all here to be honest. We're all grown, and we know how life works. And so while we can agree that it's not the wisest decision in the world, I think the idea of destroying a person's 30 years of life work and ruining their reputation, I think that's a punishment that's probably a bit too harsh, because here's the reason that it becomes a slippery slope too. After they finish going after the men, well, you know what the men are going to start doing? Two things are going to happen with the men. And ladies should understand this. One, men are mortified, especially black men. They are mortified. They're going to be scared to even talk to you, to even say hello to you, give you a compliment, because they're scared that they're going to be labeled a predator because they told you that they thought you were pretty. They're going to be afraid of being labeled as as like a rapist because they asked you out on a date. So men are gonna just be scared. So they're gonna go to Tinder and swipe left and swipe right. They're gonna find some hoes on Tinder, or they're gonna go handle their business in a strip club, or they're gonna be out here just searching for women in the street, because they'll be like, no, I like her a lot. I have a lot in common with her. She's beautiful and she's intelligent. But if I go near her, then I might get persecuted. So men are gonna be scared to talk to you. That's the first thing. Here's the second thing. Men are getting sick of this. People with common sense, it ain't just men. People with common sense are just getting sick of it. They just think it's stupid. They think it's the dumbest thing in the world, right? They know the difference between assault and somebody asking you out on a date, or the difference between rape and two consenting adults deciding they want to go kick it a little bit after work. So what's going to eventually happen is they're going to start shaping policies that don't just punish the men for when they're sleeping with the women. They're going to punish the women for hitting on the men. They're going to punish the women. They're going to, if the man shows up, and some man's going to sue, and he's going to say, look, yeah, I slept with her, but look at all these text messages she sent me asking me to go home with her that night. Look at how many times she was hitting on me, trying to seduce me. Right. And they're going to come up with some term to label it or something like the same way they use that same language where they infantilize a woman and make it so that a man just manipulated her mind and just turned her little mushy brain into Play-Doh and tricked her into sleeping with him. They're going to start coming up with that language for women as well. They're going to say she seduced me. She took advantage of the fact that I'm attracted to women. I have a sex addiction, and she exploited my sex addiction, which I have a disability, and because she exploited my disability and my sex addiction, I should be able to sue her for $10 million and ruin her career too. Like I think that's where it's going to go. It's going to just get stupid. It's just going to get stupid instead of just looking at it for what it is, which is that grown-ups get together and they create babies sometimes, or sometimes they don't create babies. Maybe they create drama, but it's going to happen. So I think that this Tavis Smiley PBS thing is kind of crazy to me. So anyway, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. Also, I want to remind you guys real quick that I'm going to be in Hanover, Maryland next month. I want to mention the URL in case you guys want to come out to our event. It's not our event, it's someone else's event, but I'm participating. It's the URL is springintowealth.com. That's springintowealth.com. And then I'll be in San Jose in the next few weeks. That URL is WeSummit-Boyce.com. They gave me a special code, I guess, so they can see how many of my people show up. It's WeSummit, WeSummit-Boyce.com. So feel free to write that down and show up and come on out. And also, last but not least, if you want to check out our financial workbooks and flashcards for Black children, you can go to financialworkbooks.com. That's financialworkbooks.com. So here's what he says. Okay, so let me read more. He says, the truth is that PBS conducted a sham investigation and fired me based on arbitrary and esoteric standards and values that were certainly not applied evenly to the talent throughout the organization, that they relied on false statements from anonymous sources who never even worked for my company, and that other witness testimony was utterly discredited, unsubstantiated, or completely uncorroborated. And another point that I didn't mention here, he does mention this. Tavis Smiley, he says, I'd consensually dated persons with whom I had worked. For some, my truth might represent professional misjudgment, albeit decades ago. So they bring up old stuff. I don't really know how many of you in here would feel comfortable if people were scrutinizing who you dated in 1992. I don't know. Maybe you wouldn't care, but I think it would be interesting. How many of you would enjoy it if somebody went through the last 25, 30 years of your dating history and basically treated you like a predator for every person you dated since 1990? I think that would be like a little bit rough. He says, but it does justify this kind of public character. He says, but does it justify this public character shredding? Today, it's me. Tomorrow, it could be you, your son, your husband, or your brother. Indeed, according to research, 60% of Americans have dated a workplace colleague. The data also reveal that on the list of the top 5 places people meet where relationships lead to marriage, at work was number 1. So work is the number 1 place that people meet other people that they eventually marry. So by outlawing and banning workplace relationships, you're really blocking nature. You're blocking something that is very natural among human beings. And what's really fascinating, and this, again, this is the sheer insanity and the ridiculousness of white feminist thinking. They're not punishing everybody for getting together in the workplace. They're only going after the men. And so if you study the history of the gender war between white and black folks, what you'll observe is that basically this anti-male sentiment has been huge in white America, and some black people adopt this. Why? Well, because you go to these indoctrination factories called white universities, where they indoctrinate you into white, liberal, politically correct thinking. And so you end up coming out reciting the terminology and the ideology that they teach you on these campuses. How do I know? Well, because I was a college professor for 25 years. I've taught on several campuses: University of Kentucky, Indiana University, Syracuse University. And I remember noticing, I said, wow, this is so interesting. It ain't about really true knowledge. It's not about true expression of thought or freedom of thought. It's really about sort of indoctrinating you into a way of viewing the world and telling you that if you don't view the world in the way that we tell you, then you're ignorant and you're stupid. So then you come home and you've got parents that actually have common sense, or maybe they have more conservative values or whatever, or you got the old school grandma or whatever who literally looks at you like you're crazy because you come home from college speaking a whole different language and that doesn't make any sense to her. But you're looking at her like she's ignorant because a white man gave you a piece of paper that made you think you're better than grandma, who has values that she picked up before the civil rights movement. So at the end of the day, all of this, and there's more to Tavis's letter. And I'm gonna read a little bit more. But really, I think that you kind of have to look at this in the bigger picture of things. There's a reason why they're going after Tavis, but they're elevating Billy Porter. There's a reason why they're going after the masculine black man and elevating the feminine black man. There's a reason why they will talk about heterosexual behavior as if it's predatory, but go after LGBT behavior as if that is to be celebrated. You can't tell me that heterosexual black men are the only men who are, or only human beings that are doing things that could be defined as problematic or a little bit gross or whatever. Like, I can't even imagine Billy Porter. I read that brother's bio. I read his whole bio to just understand, where he comes from. And I'm gonna tell you, that's a sick son of a bitch. That guy, if you look at his bio, he has really been through some shit. And he ain't a normal human being, right? Seriously, him and his white boyfriend, I'm sure, are, I bet you would probably vomit if you went into their personal life for more than 10 seconds, right? So anyway, let me read more of this. So Tavis also says, sometimes to get at the truth, you have to look. Oh, sorry, I already read that. He said that the PBS conducted a sham investigation, an investigation conducted by a lone individual already on the payroll of PBS's outside legal counsel, who never spoke to a single witness in person, made random decisions about credibility based on how folks sounded on the phone, and never once spoke to a current member of my team. So they never spoke to anybody on his team. The idea that these people were credible was very arbitrary. This is one individual who was on PBS's payroll. So so when you get into investigations like that, it's really, unfortunately, it becomes one of those things where they're sort of just like, look, just give us an excuse to get rid of this guy. Just give us a reason that we can get rid of him. So if you come back and say, I did the investigation and I didn't find anything, that's not an acceptable answer. Or if you say, I did the investigation and they actually said Tavis is a good guy, he's great to work with, don't want to hear that. If you go do the investigation and you come back and you say, yeah, a couple of people don't like him, but the other 90% do, they're going to focus on the 10% that don't. I'll give you an example. I got a phone call one time from a black male professor who had been accused of being a he had been, a white woman had said, a white female in his class, I'm not making this up. This is the danger. This is the Title IX legislation. Your buddy Obama pushed this through. It affects universities and affects your sons. That's why you have a lot of black men like Quintez Cephas being falsely accused of rape, things like that. Anyway, this black professor, they came to him and they said, we have an accusation against you and we're conducting an investigation. So he says, okay, so what's the accusation? They said, we can't tell you. He said, okay, well, who's my accuser? They said, we can't tell you. And he said, okay, so you're not telling me what I'm accused of. You're not telling me who my accuser is. So, but they called in an outside law firm. Now, he called me because he was concerned. He had spent 20 years, like Tavis, he's a 20-year veteran professor, had a stellar record, impeccable credentials, actually. And he called me because he said, Boyce, I'd like for someone to listen in on these meetings we're having so I can have an outside witness. And I said, sure, I'll be glad to come to your meeting. So they'd hired these outside lawyers to come in and investigate this black man. So he's sitting at a table with a white woman who's asking him all these questions about, what he did and how he interacted with students and things like that. And he said, I don't understand what's going on. He said, I've never slept with a student. I've never, gotten cozy with a student. Like I've never done anything like that. And let me tell you what, we eventually, after 1 year of this hanging over his head and him risking professional death, what the allegation was, we found out what the allegation was. You know what it was? I kid you not. A white female student in his class had told them, he makes me uncomfortable. And they were, and when they found out, they were like, well, what did he do to make you uncomfortable? He'd never even had one direct conversation with this female. He'd never talked to her in private ever. She came to class and said that he made a joke about they would have baby showers for the women that were having children. And he said something to one of the pregnant ladies. He said, so when's the baby hatch? And she found that to be offensive and said that this man makes me uncomfortable. That's a crazy woman. Like that's a mentally ill person who is just uncomfortable with black men, period. Because nobody else was offended by the joke. Nobody else made a complaint against him. When they did this investigation, they went and they surveyed, check this out, they surveyed 70 students. 65 or 66 of them said, he's great. I love him. 3 or 4 said, oh, I don't like him. Maybe because they got a bad grade. Maybe because they just don't like black professors. Maybe because they just don't like him as a person. But only 4 or something out of 60 people said something negative. Do you know what they did? They focused on the negative. They focused on the 4 who said something negative instead of the 56 or so who said something positive. That's what happens when you get into these sham investigations. And that's why it's really important to look at the fine print. Go beneath the surface. Like, what were you really looking for? What was your agenda in the first place? And this is happening to black people everywhere. This is not just Tavis. This isn't just the professor I'm talking about. This is happening all over the country. That's why I really think you got to really reconsider your overcommitment to white supremacy by sending your children to go work for white people. Because I'm sorry, some of these folks are crazy. Some of this stuff is insane. So anyway, let me keep going. Hit the thumbs up button. Please hit the thumbs up button. So he says, PBS has taken pride in being regarded as, quote, the most trusted network in America. Indeed, all of us who have ever worked for PBS take seriously the public trust. But PBS is not run by Big Bird, Arthur, Curious George, or Clifford the Big Red Dog. The folk who pilot PBS are real people who are fallible and flawed, people who make mistakes, people with prejudices, people who hold grudges. The same people who broadcast Sesame Street are not above starting a street fight. I'm not the first person PBS has tried to discredit, demonize, and destroy. 20 years ago, they targeted another one of their third-party partners, only to have a federal jury unanimously find that PBS had actually defrauded the partner. The jury awarded the plaintiff nearly $47 million. PBS, said the plaintiff, was quote, supposed to be the good guys. But the next thing you know, these guys you think are the sweetest, are the sweetness and light are perpetuating a fraud. And a fraud is a fraud is a fraud. Sadly, the values and standards that PBS professes and promotes in programming are not the same values and standards with which they conduct your business. If the programming you watch on public television is only made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you, every fellow citizen has a right to know whether, quote, the most trusted network in America, end quote, can really be trusted to be honorable, just and fair, to protect and respect the dignity and humanity of all people with whom they work. So now he talks about the immoral clause. This is really interesting. He says, as a child, I remember reading about the great Paul Robeson and how the Hollywood studios maligned him during the Red Scare years. This was back when they were going after a lot of people, accusing everybody to be communists and of being communists and all that stuff. And they were destroying people's careers by making false accusations against a lot of people. They did that to Dr. King, and a lot of folks went through that. Decades later, on my PBS program, I would be discussing the life of screenwriter Dalton Trumbo, as depicted in the movie Trumbo, and other Hollywood figures who were blacklisted for their political beliefs. In the late 1940s, studios would nefariously exploit morals clauses to escape talent contracts that they no longer wanted to honor. So they had these morals clauses that were really vague that allowed them to basically get out of contracts that they didn't want, where they didn't want to pay the money. Sadly, I mean, so think about it. It's almost like, has anybody ever seen a situation where somebody, where you knew they were looking for a reason to get rid of you, and then suddenly the thing that they always overlooked suddenly became a big deal? Like the little thing that everybody was getting away with, like suddenly they point that out for you because they really want you out of there. Like that's what he's talking about with the morals clauses. He says, today, a morals clause is essentially a moving target. It can be anything the employer chooses or needs it to be. Moreover, they can indiscriminately claw back decades into your life, as they did with me, to try and dig up dirt. PBS has argued that they could fire me for any reason or no reason at all, and the court has backed them up on that claim. But curiously, they did not. They could easily have chosen to just not renew my deal, since my contract was up at the end of 2017. Instead, they chose to conduct a bogus investigation and to exploit and weaponize a legitimate movement for the human rights of women everywhere as a pretext to not just fire me, but to smear my good name in the court of public opinion. After 30 years in the broadcast business, I have been unable to find or create work in my industry. So Tavis, as a brand, as a human being, has really struggled and suffered under this. And I remember that was one of the discussions that I had with Kyle Bowser, the Yvette Lee Bowser's husband, and we were talking about the stress and the challenges of Tavis having a brand that was like him as a person. And so what Tavis is dealing with is the same thing Bill Cosby went through to a point. Obviously, Cosby's situation was much more severe because they're sending him to die in prison because he was accused of touching a white woman's boob, a woman he paid $3 million for. I didn't know boob touches were worth $3 million. If anybody has $3 million to pay me, you can touch any part of my body you want. And I would almost even dare to say that I would even ask my woman, if you want to touch her for $3 million. I don't know. I'm not telling you that you should, but I'm saying that I would probably ask her permission, and I wouldn't be surprised if she said yes, because $3 million is a lot to pay for a titty touch. But what's also fascinating is that there was no evidence that this boob touch allegedly happened. And also the idea that you die in prison for allegedly touching another human being is a real clear example of how white supremacy works in America. It says that because the racial hierarchy is so clear and so profound, that if you even touch me, I have the right to do whatever I want to you, right? Remember, Black Wall Street got burned down because a black man was accused of touching a white woman. So these histories are all connected. There's nothing new under the sun. This all has a legacy. So with Tavis, I hate seeing this happen to the brother. I'm not saying that I think he's a perfect person. I don't know if he's perfect. I don't know what kind of person he is in that regard. But I can say that if it was the case that he was consensually dating women that wanted to get with him, I don't think that's a crime. I don't think that's a reason to destroy a person. I don't think that's right. So let me keep reading. He says, after 2 years of fighting to have my say in the court of law, Monday, February 10th, cannot come soon enough for me. All I've ever wanted is for the truth to be told, and finally it will be. I remain confident that the truth will prevail. Well, let me say this. I'm going to bring the truth to you. And if you know anything about this any privileged information, or if Tavis, you see this video, brother, I don't know how to get in touch with you, but if you want to come on here and use my platform to share your perspective, you are invited to do so. PBS is not welcome on this platform, but Tavis is. So I would love to hear more, and I hope that you guys hear me when I say that I think Tavis's case actually is bigger and more relevant to the Black community than the Byron Allen case. The Byron Allen case was more of a contractor dispute. It's just or business disagreement. Like we want you to put our channels on your network. You don't want to do it. So, now I'm going to point out your racist behavior and use that as a pretext to be able to get you to take my channels in. If Byron Allen gets his channels on to Comcast, I don't think the Black community is going to benefit much from that. I just don't. He doesn't even have a Black wife, right? So all the billions of dollars he makes is going to go, to somebody else when he dies. That's just me keeping it 100. But I think in this case, this matters because this affects your sons. Most of you have sons or brothers or fathers who are in the workplace. How many of you are or know a Black man who works for white people? Does anybody know a Black man who works for white people who either does work for white people or has worked for white people? If you know a Black man who works for white people, raise your hand, right? So, this is relevant for them because what this is basically, what Tavis is doing, I think that he's making a great sacrifice here is he's kind of standing up to the bullshit. He's basically saying, look, Tavis was one of the first ones to, stand up for things like the Me Too movement and stuff like that. But he's basically saying, like, look, wait a minute. Are you really trying to tell me that now consensual sex has become some sort of, crime? Like it's crazy. So so that's why I think you should pay attention to this case. And that's why I think he deserves support. And that's why I took the time this morning to talk about it on this podcast. And that's why I'm going to talk about it again, because this does directly affect you and your family. So do me a favor. I want to let you guys know today at 2 p.m. Eastern, I believe that's the time that we're scheduled. I'm going to go live and I'm bringing on a brother named Willie T. Ribbs. You should know about Willie T. He was a great Black race car driver, and his documentary it's 2 p.m. Central, so it's 3 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Eastern today. Willie T. Ribbs, his documentary Uppity is now on Netflix. I believe today is the day that it's going to be launched. I watched the documentary. It's an amazing story. And Willie's coming on today to talk about his experience as a Black NASCAR driver. He was supported by and funded by Bill Cosby, among others. So there were a few people that helped him along the way, but a lot. White folks were acting white the whole time, and I like Willie T. I met him one time, and I just think the brother's a really smart guy. And also, last but not least, if you want to check out our wealth building program for children, get your children enrolled in business school. You can go to blackmillionairesoftomorrow.com. That's blackmillionairesoftomorrow.com. Use the code word podcast, and you can get 30% off if you sign your children up to the program. blackmillionairesoftomorrow.com. Last but not least, tonight, the Black Millionaire Factory meets. We meet once a week, and we talk about strategies to protect your wealth, to build your wealth. Everything from estate planning to business development, etc. I teach that with attorney Nicole Compton. So if you'd like to join us as part of that program, you can go to theblackmillionairefactory.com, theblackmillionairefactory.com. So feel free to go check that out. Hit the thumbs up button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. And I'm out of here, guys. Have a good day, and I will see you soon. Be good. Peace.